This is your one and only 𝐵𝑒𝑟𝑒81 with your daily dose of video goodness, and welcome back to another informational Valheim video. Today, I'm going to absolutely overload you with information about the events/raid system. Let's get to it. Let's talk about how I did my testing. There are some admin commands that you can run, such as event and then the event name. That will force trigger said event. You can also run the command random event, all one word, and that will trigger a random event that can trigger for your character depending on what's allowed to trigger, and we'll talk about how it figures that out here in a minute. So you can run that as well. And then there is stop event, and that obviously stops an event. And then there is list keys, and it helps if you actually put the S there so you can see the keys that are available, and we'll talk about those in a second and why those are important. And then there is reset keys, which obviously resets all of the keys, and then there is set key, which sets a specific key and adds it to that list. Okay, so now that you know all of that, let's get one thing very, very clear here, because there seems to be this thing going around where anybody who does testing using admin stuff, the tests aren't somehow legit because you didn't go about doing it the hard way, the way that, you know, just playing the game and testing stuff, whatever. They are even more legit than testing stuff, whatever happens in the game, because they are controlled. Those commands, the admin commands, are not in there for you to have fun and for you to be creative and all of that stuff. They are in there for the devs' purposes to test the game. This is not the only game to do that. There are lots of games that give access to the command console. There are many games that lock it. Most games actually lock your access to the command console, and you can never get it, or they completely turn it off. Some leave it on and you can hack it. But make no mistake, these commands are here specifically to test things so that the devs can make sure their game is working properly. And that is why I use them for testing for this video, and some of the info that you're going to find out about in this video would have just taken ages to figure out not using admin commands. Okay, so now let's move on to keys. At the time of making this video, there seems to only be a total of 7 possible keys that you can have. 1 for each boss, 1 for killing a troll, and 1 for killing ☉lings, or a ☉ling. You only need to kill 1. You only need to kill 1 troll, 1 ☉ling, and kill each of the bosses once for the keys to show up. These keys are very important because these keys determine what possible events you can have when an event is triggered. And we're going to get into the mechanics of that a little bit here in a minute, but I want you to understand how the keys work and how they dictate which events you can have. So if you don't have any keys at all, the only possible event you're going to get is the army of 𝐴𝐞𝐴, or however you put Deerface. We're going to call him Lightning Deerface. The army of Lightning Deerface, that's the only event you can have when you don't have any keys at all. Once you've killed Lightning Deerface, the next available event that can trigger is the army of the Elder, so that's the forest is moving. None of the other ones can trigger at this point. It doesn't matter what you do. You can go kill a ☉ling, you can go kill a troll. It's not going to happen until you kill the Elder. Once you kill the Elder, then at that point, the forest trolls can trigger and the bone mass army can trigger, so the foul smell from the swamp. But if you have not killed a troll, and the only thing you've done is killed Lightning Deerface and the Elder, the only thing that can trigger for you is the army of the bone mass, aka the swamp foul smell from the swamp or whatever. So are you beginning to understand how the keys play a part and work with each other here? So then we go on to the bone mass. So once you've killed the bone mass, then you will get the army of Moder, so the cold wind from the north. If you've killed ☉lings at this point, or a ☉ling, you can now get the sulfur in the air. If you've killed forest trolls, you can get the ground is shaking. And at this point, because you've killed the bone mass, you will always from here on out have a chance to get skeletons. It's skeleton surprise for the rest of your days. However, if you have not killed a ☉ling, if you somehow managed to never kill one, and you somehow managed to not kill any forest trolls, you will only have the army of Moder and skeletons. So moving on to the dragon, once you've defeated the dragon, you should, and I say you should, get the Goblin Army, and we're going to talk about that here more in a minute. You should get the Goblin Army, If you've killed ⴬𴬏𴬏. If you killed a forest trolls. If you've killed this, or since you've killed the bone mass, skeletons. Now it can be any one of those. When there's multiples, it just says that here's the list of possible ones I can pick from, and then it'll roll for one, and then you can get any one of those. Also, take note that the keys are map specific. They are not character specific. So if you jump onto a server where they have already unlocked a bunch of the boss keys by defeating the bosses, then you have all of those possible events for yourself as soon as you log on to the server. It does not matter if your character is baby fresh new or if it's an old character or not. It makes no difference. It's based on the map. So let's quickly go through all of the events that are currently possible at the time of recording this video. So the first event we have is the 𝐴𝐽𝐴 rallies the creatures of the forest. That is the army of 𝐴𝐽𝐴. That is just going to be, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't care. Lightning deer face. That's just going to be necks and boars. That's it. That's all that's going to show up during the time of this event. The next event is the forest is moving. That's going to be a bunch of what I like to call idiots. So here we go. You're going to see some brutes in here. You're going to see a bunch of the little greylings or the gray dwarfs. Yeah, that's it. That's what's going to show up when the forest is moving. Oh, also these guys here, the shaman. All your gray dwarf friends, you know them, you love them. They're going to show up when the forest starts moving. The next one we have is a foul smell from the swamp. That's going to be a bunch of draugr and some skeletons mixed in there. It's also going to rain during this time, so you'll end up being wet. And as you can see, we got a bunch of draugr here. And there's some skeletons. So it's just a nice mix of your good old swamp buddies, the skeletons and the draugr, along with rain, which if you don't know, it's going to slow how quickly your stamina regens. The next boss event is the cold wind blows from the mountains. I don't know why I was thinking it was from the north. It's the cold wind blows from the mountains. I'm going to say a north a whole bunch in this video, but it's from the mountains. That is the drakes. This is the army of ⴬𴬏🬏. And there's something else to keep in mind about this event, and that is the temperature also drops. As you can see, I am freezing now once I took off my wolf cape, and it's not because I got hit by those guys. It's because in the event area, we're going to be super cold because that's part of the event. And then you're just going to get swarmed by a bunch of drakes. Next, we have skeleton surprise. That's just going to be a bunch of skeletons to show up. And as you can see, you just get a group of skeletons. It'll be anything from melee to archers, and sometimes the green one can show up with the mace. I don't think he always shows up, but he can. Oh yeah, there he is. There's the big guy right here. The rancid remains can show up. And then you're just going to get a nice mix of archers and melee. Then we have the ground is shaking. You all know this one. You love this one. It's your forest troll friends. They're going to come and try to wreck your base if you don't get outside fast enough. But if you get outside fast enough, you will be absolutely fine. Then we have the You Are Being Hunted event. This is the wolves event. Once again, if you have any information on this event at all, if this has happened to you at any point, please let me know down in the comments and give me as much detail as you possibly can so that we can figure out exactly what it takes to trigger this event. So as you can see, it's just a bunch of wolves that show up. And last but not least, there's a smell of sulfur in the air, and that is the ⴬𴬏🬏. They're going to show up and try to wreck your day and light you on fire. Okay, let's get into the mechanics of the raid and break down how they work. So first off, each raid has its own separate timer. It is based on a time. It is not based on how many things you kill. So the army of lightning deer face, you're looking at 1:30 seconds. You just have to run out that timer. The goblin army, when it becomes available, should be 2 minutes. That's what it is now. The army of the elder lasts 2 minutes. Skeletons last 2 minutes. Army of the bone mass, so foul smell from the swamp, 2:30 seconds. The army of motor, so cold wind from the north, 2:30 seconds. Trolls, 1:20. Surtlings, 2 minutes. So let's talk in detail about these mechanics specifically. So if you take a look at my map up there, you can see that we have a red circle around our base because it was triggered, and this is our base. And you'll notice that the AI does not care about the base. The AI doesn't give a crap about your base. The AI is a slightly different AI than normal AI, and it is triggered specifically to go after you. That's all it wants. Now, If you want it to stop from attacking your base, all you have to do is step outside. If it is attacking your base, it's attacking your base because it wants to get to you, and it's going to go through the base to get to you. Now, like I said, all of these things are on a timer. So all you have to do is your initial group that is here is just kite them around. If you don't want to fight them until the timer runs out, then you only have to fight one group. If you run outside that circle that is on my map up there, it actually stops your timer. So if we run out here and it no longer says skeleton surprise up there at the top, that prevents the timer from continuing. And you'll see that the skeletons are kind of just doing whatever now. They stop chasing. That one's over there after a boar. They don't care anymore. They're not going to attack my base. They're not going to do anything. They're not targeting your base. They're targeting you. You can see they were just standing around. They didn't even care about anything. They're just standing and waiting for me to come back in. And that's because as soon as you run out of the area, the game pauses the whole event. It says, hey, just put a hold on that. The person is gone. If you actually teleport out of the area, it will just put everything in stasis. It'll be on a complete hold until you get back because the area will unload. As soon as you come back in, the event will pick up right where you left off. I can stand out here indefinitely and that event is not going to go away. That timer is paused until I run back in there. Now you can see they're tired of fighting. Some of them are running off, as you see there, so we don't have to fight quite as many. And now all I have to do is fight these and the event's over, and that was all there was to it. So let's talk about what is necessary for events to trigger, because there are a lot of different things that come into play for triggering events. First off, your house doesn't matter. The game does not care about your shack at all. You can see here, we have a nice little shack here. If I run my macro for seeing if an event can run or not, you can see nothing happens. You can actually verify whether or not an event can run, because if you go into your player log file where your saved games are, if an event could have run there, it would have said possible events and then listed the possible events. But because it can't run any, mine just said possible events 0. And that's how you can test easily whether or not an event should have run or not. So right now it could not run because there's nothing here to trigger it. So there were 0 possible events that could run. Now, to trigger for an event to trigger, you need 3 fires, 3 portals will do the trick, 3 wards will do the trick. Over here in the furniture tab, 3 of either of these beds. Now, the furniture doesn't seem to matter. If I put down 3 chests and we try, nothing happens. You can see it didn't run anything, and it's saying stop event because I'm just running a macro that I made. So if I put down 3 beds, however, and we run that macro, you can see the ground is shaking. So it's going to, the events can trigger. If we get rid of one of those beds and we try it again, you can see it doesn't happen. So it's 3 of specific items, and it's not any item. It's 3 of like any combo of 3 beds or 2 beds. 1, you get the idea. 1 fire, there you go. It's gonna run. It can also just be 3 fires. If I delete these beds and I put down 2 fires and we try to run it, nothing. If I put down a 3rd fire and we run it, oh look, the ground is shaking. So far from what I've tested, like I said, campfire, the hearth, the portal, the ward, nothing from the build menu. From the furniture menu, it only appears that the beds will do it. And from the crafting menu, it's the crafting stations. So anything that crafts, it could be 3 smelters, it could be 3 stone cutters. We can just put down 3 stone cutters here and then it should run. There you go. So any 3 crafting stations or any 3 combination of 3 of those things that I just mentioned there. Now that's not all. It also takes into consideration what biome you're in. Different things can happen, or different events can happen for specific biomes. So for example, if you do not have any keys and the only event that can trigger is the army of lightning deerface, that'll only show up in the meadows and the Black Forest. That's it. If you, for some reason, set up shop right from the get-go because you're an absolutely crazy Viking in the swamp, then you won't get the army of 𝐴𝐼𝐾 ever. It'll never show up for you because you're in the swamp. If you've defeated Lightning Deerface, then the army of the Elder can show up in the meadows, it can show up in the plains, it can show up in the swamps, the Black Forest. It will not show up in the mountain. I tested this. Most of the events will happen in most biomes, with the exception of the mountain and the Mistlands, the Deep North, and the Ashlands. So no events at all will trigger in the Deep North or the Ashlands. In the Mistlands, the only event that will trigger is the skeletons. So if you set up shop right from the get-go in the Mistlands, you are never going to have any events until you defeat the bone mass, and then you can randomly have skeletons. No events run in the mountains except for the army of the bone mass. I know, you would think that the dragon army, the cold wind of the north, considering it is drakes, would show up in the mountain if you lived up there and attack you, but the drake army does not show up in the mountain. I don't know why. I tested it because I was like, this is dumb. I'm doing something wrong. Obviously, this has to show up here. It doesn't. No matter what I did, it would not show up in the mountains. So if you are in the mountain biome, you have your house in there, the only thing that is ever going to show up for you if an event can trigger is the army of the bone mass. And then as soon as you beat the bone mass, you won't have any more events ever. Once you've defeated all of the bosses, if you've killed a Surtling and a troll, the only events that will happen is the trolls, the skeletons, and the Surtlings. Those will only happen in the meadows, the plains, the swamp, the Black Forest. Once again, Mistlands will only ever have the skeletons. The mountain gets none of those. Also, in order to prevent an event from triggering, if you're near your base, you have to be over 18 foundations away from your 3 event triggering objects. Last but not least, there is nothing you can do to specifically trigger an event if you want one to happen. It is completely random. You can take a look at this inside the assembly DLL. You can see the code for it. It runs a check every so often to basically, it rolls the dice every so often to see if you can have an event or not. If it checks and says, hey, this time you're going to get an event, then it takes a look at what biome you're in, sees if it can run one in that biome and what it can run in said biome. If you're in a biome where it can run whatever events, it then picks randomly from those list of events based on the keys that have been unlocked on your map. So there's nothing you can really do to make them happen, but like I said, there are plenty of things that you can do to make sure that they don't happen, specifically being in certain biomes or having a count of 3 things. So there's one other thing that I know is going to get asked, and I want to show you here that I did some testing on. So for the 3 things that have to be there for an event to trigger, aka 3 campfires, 3 crafting stations, 3 beds, whatever, once again, any combination of those, as long as there is a total count of 3, I wanted to see how far away the 3rd one would have to be for an event to trigger. And it's not based on how far apart they are, it's based on how far you are from a total of 3. And so I have 2 here, and if you take a look here, it's all the way over here, and I can stand right here, and it will not trigger. Now, if I move this over one more, if we delete this campfire, and we move this to here, and I stand right here, and we run, you can see skeleton surprise. However, if we delete it, and we move it right here, and I'm standing right here, you can see no event runs. But if I stand right here and I run it, you can see an event runs. So if you're wondering if it's possible to spread your base out far enough and spread everything out within your base far enough that an event will never happen, you're going to have to build some very convoluted base. And considering everything else, I didn't test this because, I mean, at this, like, if you really want to do this, I've shown you here how I just tested it. I'm assuming that it's a sphere, just like, because everything else that runs checks is a sphere in this. I'm assuming this is a sphere as well. But once again, I did not test to make sure, but I've done plenty of other tests, and there's enough other things that are a spheres to lead me to believe that this is a sphere as well. But anyway, you would have to not only make everything this far. So how many is this? Let's count. 18 foundations. So 18 foundations away. You would also have to make sure that at any given point of time, you are not going to be in between those 18 foundations to allow an event to trigger. So it's just kind of pointless to do, but it's interesting to see that if a station is this far away, it won't trigger, but if you stand here or move the station here, it will. there are a few events that we need to talk about. First off, the blobs event. I'm pretty sure the blobs event isn't a thing. There are a bunch of sites that say that the command to initiate the blobs event is just blobs. I've tried every variation of that I could think to try, and that doesn't actually trigger an event. You can't force trigger an event with that command. Blobs doesn't work. Capital blobs doesn't work. Army_blobs doesn't work. Army_blob. Army_ with a capital B with blobs. Blob, blob. None of it. I tried many of them. None of them triggered the event. So I'm pretty sure that that event may have been a thing at one point and isn't a thing anymore. If you have ever had the blobs attack you, and I'm not talking they just showed up in the swamp and attack you, but you're at your base in the meadows or some crap, and it says, oh my god, you're being attacked by blobs, or some text across the top of the screen that's bright yellow, and you're being swarmed by blobs, let me know down in the comment section because we need to chat so I can figure out the specific situation in which that happened. Next up, the wolves. I cannot for the life of me figure out the combination for the wolves. The wolves is a thing. I've had verification from people that I trust that have told me they have been attacked by wolves on my server. The whole "you are being hunted" has showed up on the screen when they were in the mountains and they were attacked. Now, this was on a server and it's only ever happened for these people on a server. I can't get it to trigger in single player. I have no idea what the specific things are to get it to trigger. I've tried every combination of keys that I can think to try in order to get it to trigger. I've tried multiple different mountains. I have killed so very many wolves, so very many werewolves. I just spawn them in by the 100 and murder them all, and there is no extra key that pops up, so it leads me to believe that the wolves event is based on finishing a boss like the skeletons are. So the skeletons show up after you've beat the bone mass. I assume that it is an event that shows up after you beat the dragon, but I can't get it to trigger, so I don't know what specific circumstances are needed for it to trigger. Like I said, I've tried every freaking thing I can think to get it to trigger. The only thing that I can figure is that it is bugged in single player. If you've had the wolves, if it shows up across the top of the screen and says you are being hunted, if you've had that happen to you, let me know down in the comments section and give me as much detail about how it happened to you and when it happened to you. Any little bit of detail you can give me would be absolutely amazing, and then if I can figure out the specifics on it, I will make a companion video to this one talking more in detail about that specific event. Now I want to talk about the Goblin Army for a second here. I tested this super thorough, and it appears that either it's a bug in the command for running a random event, which I don't think is the case, because it literally, the code for it, which you can see if you take a look at the Valheim assembly DLL in your Valheim install folder, the code just says, hey, pick a random event that's possible, and then it picks it. So I think that the Goblin event is actually either disabled or there is currently a bug with the Goblin event stopping it from running. So you should end up with the Goblin event after you've killed Motor, before you've killed the 5th boss, the Goblin King. Yeah, yak-ō, whatever his name is. But as it stands right now, it doesn't appear that that event runs. I've asked people on Discord. I've asked people on Reddit. I've searched all over YouTube trying to find somebody that made a video of this thing happening, and it just doesn't look like it's a thing. You can force the event. It's really easy to force. You just event space army_goblin will force trigger the event. But as far as just possible events that can happen, I don't think it ever triggers right now. At some point it may, but right now it doesn't appear to do so. So if you want to stop events and you never want to have to deal with events, the mountain, the deep north, the ashlands, and the mistlands are a safe bet. You will never have an event in the deep north or the ashlands. The only event you will ever have in the mountain is the bone mass, and the only event you will ever have in the mistlands is the skeletons. And that is only after you've defeated the bone mass, because that's the only time that that can happen. As far as the skeletons, the ☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆☆ The ☆ and the skeletons will not happen until after you've defeated the bone mass. And I think with that, I've covered every possible thing I can think to actually cover in this tutorial. If I left out anything or you have any questions, let me know down there in the comment section. And if you found this video helpful and informational, consider hitting the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be notified when I upload other Valheim content. And I don't just cover Valheim, I cover all kinds of different games, so you never know when I'm going to be making a guide for a game that you may be playing. All right, that is going to wrap it up for this episode. If you like what you saw, consider hitting that sub button. I want to give a big thank you to my patrons for making this episode possible. Y'all are absolutely amazing people. If you would like to join my elite crew of Patreon supporters, please check out the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If you're shy, you don't like to comment, just hit that thumbs up button and show your support. Until next time, thanks for watching.